Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Just go ahead and make sure that your audio devices are ready, and we will get started shortly. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd like to welcome you to the Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. My name is Sonia Delaqueto, and I'm one of 3 LionSide Chat moderators working alongside Dawn Pfeiffer-Wright and Dr. Ryan Hassler. Come on in and welcome to our campus. We're so glad that you could join us today. Before we get started, we just wanted to show that you should please feel free to submit questions throughout the program via the Q&A feature. And once the presentation concludes, we will address those questions that you have and discuss them with our presenter. We will also be recording today's session so you can revisit the topic or even share the experience with your friends and family, okay? So now I am so super excited to introduce Tish Jepsen, who is our coordinator of career services here at Penn State Berks and our We Are professional speaker. Welcome, Tish.
Welcome, students and anyone else who's joining us today. I'm Tish Jepsen. I'm the Director of Career Services at Penn State and Berks, and I am located down in 10 Perkins Student Center. We're going to talk about a number of things, but primarily we're going to talk about where do you go to college? You know, I don't know about the people that are on today, but I think there's a reason you've chosen to get a higher education degree. And one of the reasons will be probably to pursue some type of career at some point in your life, either right now while you're in college or once you graduate from college. So you're going to become a professional. And I would say, I would even stretch it to say that you're a professional now. You're a consumer of higher ed. And because you're a consumer, you want to make the best of Penn State. And I always think, I'm a Penn State grad, I think that you've made the best choice ever. And the reason I think that is that we have one of the largest alumni networks in the country. And that is invaluable when it comes to becoming a professional. Now, let's just define professional for a minute. So a professional could be that you go on to graduate school because you want to pursue a graduate program so that you can get into a career that requires a graduate program. Or you could go into a professional school because you need that professional education to become maybe an MD or whatever other type of career that you're pursuing. But you may graduate and just end up going right into employment. And I can tell you from my experience that employers are interested in great students. So I'm going to challenge you to say that out there that it doesn't so much matter that what degree you get. Now that I'm going to preface that because there are some degrees that you actually have to have certain skills by the time you graduate to move into those professions, but they are looking generally for the best students ever. So, let's look at a career model. So if you're looking at a career model, you really want to consider 3 things. So careers are made up of skills, interests, and values. So I always say, okay, you've chosen Penn State. You know, we have the 24 majors here. We have 160 possibilities at University Park. We have lots of different campuses that you can transfer to, but we're a Penn State network. we are a group of people, and we have one of the largest alumni societies in the country. And so we have this incredible network. Now, what do we do with it once we're here? So if you're looking at this model, you have an interest. Usually you come in with an interest. Some students come in and they're undecided, but they still have a general idea that they want to be in higher ed and graduate with a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts degree or an associate degree, but they have an interest to be here. The other part of the model are your skills. So hopefully, as you're going through your program, whatever major you choose, you're going to develop some skills. Those skills are going to be something that employers are looking at or going to be are interested in. So the skills that you develop in all your classes are very essential to actually getting into or kickstarting into a career. The other part, which is a huge part, is your values. What are your values? So when I look at values, I know we have a whole list of Penn State values that we want to make sure that students graduate with these Penn State values, these core respectable values. But what is a value when we talk about career? What we're talking about is if you're a student that is interested in working by themselves, so that's a value. You're really interested in doing solo work and not really be in a crowd or in a group. That's your value. Are you interested in living in the suburbs? Or are you interested in moving to a city? Do you want to stay close to home, or do you want to go across the country? Those are all values. So the sooner you start to develop a brand, and we're going to talk about what is your brand, the better your chances of getting hired once you graduate. So like, again, a career model is interests, skills, and your values. So very, very important to look at all of those aspects. Now, if you look at a higher ed degree, let's just take, for example, a higher ed degree is made up of three things primarily: your 60 credits of gen ed, your major requirements, and your electives. So every degree is made up of these things. So we know that our students have first year seminars to learn a little bit about a lot of things. And in that first year seminar, you start to explore majors. And you really can't separate major and career. So it's important to understand the majors that Penn State have to offer. And we have a lot of talented people on campus. You're an academic advisor, the career office here, some of our staff that can talk to you about majors. And we just got finished recently. We had a major carnival where we had questions, and I had a game at that carnival. I don't if you attended, where students got to pick a duck, and on the bottom of that duck was a number, and they were asked a question. So there was a pink duck in our bowl, and that duck had a question attached to it. And what is a hospitality? What does someone in the hospitality profession do? And so I was surprised by how few students understood what hospitality majors do with their careers. And I was surprised by some of the other answers. So what I came back to thinking is that students are not understanding our majors or the 160 majors at Penn State in detail and what you do with them. So I always tell the story that if you had $100,000, you were given that $100,000 and you were asked to invest it in the stock market, what would you do? And what you do first is you would research actually the companies that you're going to invest in, so that you made sure that your investment would grow. Well, the same thing with a college education. So you're here, it's an investment. You're asked to choose a major and to pursue that at some point in time. And to make an intelligent decision, you want to start thinking about the long-term aspects of that particular choice. So that investment will pay off. So let's talk a little bit about once you have made the choice to become to pursue a major, and how do you make that professional? How do you start to brand yourself? How do you start to look a little unique? And I want to start off by really talking about how important networking is to your profession. We know that statistically 95% of people get hired through their network. They create their own luck. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know everyone in that area or in that profession, but you have to know how to write to ask the right questions. So when I go into high schools, I'll talk to a whole room full of high school students and I'll ask them, what does the word inquisitive mean? And, you know, some hands go up and what it means is you know how to ask questions. So, you know, how do you use the Penn State network, the alumni, the people that are here on this campus to make intelligent decisions about your career? You ask them questions and not so much talking about yourself, talking to them about what they do. So important to be very inquisitive. I know that the students that start early, that show up in career services, or I talk to in classrooms, because I'm in about 60 classes a year, those students who start to really utilize the career office and ask a lot of questions end up starting to get comfortable with their brand, what they are unique, how they're unique, and how they're going to impact the world of work once they graduate. And so let's just talk a little bit about, I wear a lot of different hats on at this campus. One of the hats I wear is I'm a career counselor. So with that hat, we do some testing. And many of you first-year seminar students probably have exposed to something called My Plan, where you've taken maybe the Myers-Briggs, and maybe I've come into your class and gone over what the Myers-Briggs is. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the Myers-Briggs. There's also a values assessment on that in that area and an interest assessment. But the Myers-Briggs, this personality assessment, I'm a firm believer if you don't understand yourself, if you don't understand your strengths and your weaknesses, it's really difficult to have a plan. And I do know too that research shows that students that have a plan, that feel things in their gut, that know why they're doing things, are the students that are more successful. So because you have ownership, you start to feel connected to why are you studying that math class, or why am I studying, becoming a better writer. You start to understand that that's going to help you in your future career. So the sooner that you get this investment, or you understand your strengths and you understand your weaknesses, the better chance of you becoming successful. So as a counselor, when we do the MBTI, we look at 8 different preferences. And those preferences are whether you're an introvert, are you an extrovert? And when I look at introvert and extrovert, I'm looking at, all right, how do you recharge your batteries at the end of the day? So the University of Michigan used the MBTI to put roommates together, because they know that if an introvert is living with an extrovert and the extrovert wants to have people in the room all day, that there might be a problem, because the problems are created around the differences. Now, the introvert might really like the extrovert, but the problem is the introvert wants to recharge at the end of the day by being by themselves, and the extrovert likes to process things with other people. This is something that would come out in that assessment, in that MBTI. So the personality assessment helps you to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. And what are you trying to sell? You're trying to sell your brand, and you're trying to utilize your network. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. You're a psychology major. You're here, you're going to be doing a few internships, some research projects, and each time you go out into the community, and by the way, internships kind of run through the career office, and we keep extensive lists of where students have done internships in the past. But as those students go out and do an internship, they're starting to develop a network. They're starting to develop connections in the community with people that have been in the profession for a period of time. Sometimes they're alums that work in those professions, sometimes not, but they are starting to develop that. So how do you develop these opportunities? One of the things I want to say, stop right now, is that all students should have 3 to 4 professional experiences before they graduate. So what is a professional experience? It's something that's attached to what they're majoring in, something that's going to help their brand by the time they graduate. So 3 to 4 professional experiences. That could be that they have done extensive research for one of the faculty. It could be that they have done an internship. It could be that they have an incredible summer job that has leadership qualities in it. It could be that they have a job while going to college that relates to their major. Whatever it is, that resume, that marketable resume, is going to really highlight those 3 to 4 professional experiences. So when a student says to me, I'm a psych major, but I don't know what to put on my resume, we know that we're going to make a marketable resume by adding things that they've done, whether it be an internship or research, or it could even be a project in one of their classes that's going to highlight their skills. So a resume, a marketable resume, and the reason I'm talking about a marketable resume is because students that have learned how to do a resume, and probably in high school, you've touched on this, have a chronological resume where they mix up all their work. And you're talking to someone who waitressed their way through college. I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing that kind of work, but in a marketable resume, you're selling your brand. So you're selling your major at Penn State so that you can get hired once you graduate. So in a marketable resume, you're using that relevant experience. You're separating out those jobs that you've done, like waitressing or working at Dick's Sporting Goods or wherever you've worked, from your actual professional self. So that professional marketable resume has a really clear goal, like you're writing a good paper that has a clear statement. You're supporting it with your major. Those are your interests and skills. You're hopefully supporting it with a good GPA. That is so important. And then you're developing skills in your classes. So you're learning in your psych, as we go back to that example, you're learning as a psychology major, what are the skills that are so important to do jobs in that profession. And we know what some of those skills are. You know, maybe you're a good communicator and you're very empathetic. Some of those skills that maybe are not as concrete as computer skills or language skills, but sometimes you speak 2 languages, and that's a skill that's very valued. Those are the skills that you would put on that professional resume. And then you'd go into relevant experience, which in that relevant experience section, you're going to pull in projects that you've done in your classes. So you're going to say the Pennsylvania State University, Reading, PA, the date, the name of the project, and then you're going to bullet very specific skills that you pulled from those projects that you learned. And then you may be putting an internship down, something that you did in as an intern. You may be pulling something that you had showed some leadership quality. You maybe did in charge of a summer camp, and you had some counseling skills there that you would put in there. And then those waitressing jobs or some of the other things would be at the bottom of the page in something called additional experience. So marketable resumes, and honestly, by coming and having many people look at this resume, it helps you to have a more marketable resume. So your resume should be viewed by a career services professional. Your faculty can look at it too, but you should actually run it by career services. So we're talking about understanding and starting as early as your first year. So your first year, you're starting to develop your brand. You're starting to understand, and even if you're a DUS major, you're starting to be really inquisitive, asking a lot of questions about profession, figuring out where you fit. You're getting some counseling so you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you can then decide on one of the 160 majors at University Park, or the majors that we have here at Berks. And once you have that, you're going to start to develop this resume, and the resume is going to be marketable. And even if you're a first-year student, I can't tell you how many first-year students I've seen that have very marketable resumes, because they come to Penn State with some interesting things that they've done that relate to what they want to do with their lives. So we put together this marketable resume, and many of you might not know, but Penn State has something called Nittany Lion Careers. Nittany Lion Careers is a big file cabinet, and it's a file cabinet that you all have access to because you have a user ID for Penn State. And in that file cabinet, you will be posting your marketable resume. It also houses 30,000 corporate contacts. So let me tell you a story about a student who wanted to work for Google. And he came to me and he said, I really want to work for Google. And I said, okay, can I see what you have as far as a resume? And he showed me and he said, I said, why do you want to work for Google? And he said, well, I heard that you can go to work in blue jeans. And I like computers, but I also heard that they have this incredible campus where they have a gym and you can work out on your lunch hour, and they have international food, an international food court. And it just seems like a really cool place to work. So we said, well, let's make that happen. So we looked at Nittany Lion, and we looked at the contacts that Penn State have with Google. And so anytime a recruiter comes to Penn State, whether it's for on-campus interviewing or a career fair, or in some way they've done a presentation at Penn State, their contact information is on Nittany Lion. So we looked at that and we pulled the contacts from Nittany Lion, and this particular student put his resume on Nittany Lion. He ended up going up to University Park for at that point, we're doing everything virtually now, but everything is kind of hybrid in person. But this particular time, the student went up to UP, he met with a Google rep. He was hired to go out to California, and he was hired for an internship. He then noticed that there was a company called Cisco right across the street, and decided, next summer I'm going to do something at Cisco. And what ended up happening is this student was starting to build his brand. He had the skills, he had the major, he had the GPA, he had some projects he had done in class, he started to build his brand. He started to get that network in place. And by the time he graduated, he was offered a full-time job at Google, and now he travels the world for Google. This is not unique. This story is not unique. But what is unique about this story is that the student utilized the office from day one. He was in as a first-year student. He started to develop those connections. He started to have a plan of where he was going to go and what he was going to do. He strengthened his resume each year. He had those 3 to 4 professional experiences. He started to build this brand that he could sell to a potential employer when he graduated. And that's what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is why get involved with the career office. Do we wait to our junior, senior year? No, we start as early as our first year, and we start to develop these opportunities. And the biggest advantage that Penn Staters have is that we have this huge alumni network. So when we look at social media and we looked at LinkedIn, we know that on LinkedIn, we can go to any organization or company that's on LinkedIn, and we can see how many Penn State Berks students are working at that particular company. That's an incredible network. And that's when I say you create your own luck. By having that information available to us, we're developing our own luck, because we know now that we can connect with those other Penn Staters. And the one thing about Penn Staters, because I am one, they love to give back to other Penn Staters. Love it. Love to give back to their college. And they love to help other Penn Staters get on track and start to move forward. So usually if you become inquisitive and you ask, you message a Penn Stater from a company and say, hey, can you just, what I really would like to do is just have 10 minutes of your time to ask you some questions about how did you decide to work at such and such place. They are going to be so happy to share that information with you, because they want to share their life with someone that is in the process of finding their way. And that is such a given for all Penns. I can say across the board, Penn Staters love to do that. So that's how you start to become professional. So I talked a little bit about the hats that I wear. And one of the hats is that not only do I go into first year seminars and talk about understanding your major, understanding yourself, as put the counselor hat on. There's other things that I start to talk about. One of the things that I talk about is transferable skills. So everything you do, we can define as transferable into something that an employer would be interested in. So the 10 top things that employers are looking for: communication skills, the better communicator you are. So, making sure that if you struggle with communication and presentation, writing, that you get help with that, because there's the Learning Center. There's plenty of people. There's a Writing Center. There's plenty of people out there that are going to help you really exceed and excel in communication skills. The next is motivation. How motivated are you? So if I did this presentation today and I came on and I talked like this and I sounded very boring, you would not be engaged. And employers say to me that the student that presents themselves with some energy and some ability to express themselves and they're engaged are the students that become that they are really interested in. They're really interested in how motivated are you in your area of work. The other thing is teamwork. And one of the things we know is that teamwork is very important at Penn State. So you're going to have situations all the time where you have that you're asked to work in teams. And we go back to that personality preference I was talking about. It takes all types to make a successful organization. And so you might be really good at looking at a lot of different things and being very creative, where one of your people on the team might be better at really organizing and completing tasks. So it's real important to have that teamwork. And that's one thing that you learn at Penn State. Leadership skills, your ability to get involved in professional organizations on campus, to build a network that way, or to get involved in student government or in some of the other clubs that we have here. All of that helps in what employers really love to see, which are those leadership skills. Of course, they like your academic achievement. They like your emotional intelligence. And when I wear my counselor hat, we can do some assessments on emotional intelligence. You know, why do some kids rise above and get hired and move up in companies and other people don't? You know, that has to do with how emotionally intelligent you are. How do you get along in a situation? How do you read a room? How do you deal in a group? Interpersonal skills, that's the same thing as emotional intelligence, your ability to be flexible, your technical skills, your honesty, that's all emotional intelligence, your work ethic. And the number one thing that a lot of employers tell me is your ability to solve problems. So your analytical skills. Are you able to solve a problem analytically? Can you work through a problem? Can you think out of the box? So do you need someone to tell you everything to do? Well, we're hoping that as a Penn Stater, by the time you graduate, that you have such great analytical skills that you can solve problems, that you're not going to need someone to handhold you or to tell you what task to do, that you're going to be able to think out of the box. So those problem solving, those are all transferable skills that you learn in your classes, you learn them in your clubs, you learn them in the dorm rooms, you learn it everywhere, but those are all things that employers are going to be looking for, and that career professionals can help you understand about yourself. And then how do you sell yourself? How do you sell your strengths? How do you answer weakness questions? So that's a hat that I wear. Another hat might be to develop some of these skills. So I teach in the business program, and right now we had an employer in yesterday, and we did some mock interviewing where the employer asked questions, behavioral questions. So tell me in a time in your life when you did something you were at Penn State where you weren't particularly proud of. That's a behavioral question. You know, how do you answer that question? You know, do you bring something that you did personally into that question, or do you answer it in a different way? So I'm going to give you an example. One student, and this is a true story, said, well, I was working at Sears, and now this is going back because Sears is no longer there, and he stole something. But he had a pang of guilt, so he told his supervisor and he gave it back. Now, this particular student had a 3.89 GPA. He came to the interview professionally dressed, which we spend a lot of time on. How do you present yourself? How do you look? What's your nonverbal and verbal skills? You know, how do you deal and how do you present yourself in front of an employer? Really good student and a really nice kid. But he used that example to answer that question. Now, I'm sure if you're sitting there, you're going like, I would never say that. Well, you get nervous. And sometimes what you do when you're nervous is you say the things that you really would never think you would say, but you say them anyway. And so what we teach, or what we help you to understand, is how to interview for professional interviews, primarily in behavioral interviews, where you're asked to give examples. And we teach the STAR method. And I don't have time to go into the STAR method, but it's just a way to form a answer for a behavioral question: situation, task, action, and result. And so yesterday in class, we spent a lot of time talking about how do you answer those questions? You know, what would you say? You know, what would be the situation? And so the closer and the better you understand your strengths, the easier it is to answer that type of question. So you may choose to answer it by saying, you know, in my engineering class where we had numerous projects at the same time. I found myself forgetting items that I shouldn't have forgotten. And so what I started to do is really keep detailed lists for each class of the activities that needed to be completed and the time and dates. And then what ended up happening is at the end of the semester, I was really proud of myself because I stayed on task. So yes, it was a difficult time, a period of time, or I went to the learning center and I cleaned up an issue I had. Those are things that you would use in a professional interview. So we teach you how to prepare for interviews. So this is another hat. So negotiating of salary, how to network professionally, how to use the resources that Penn State has to offer, how to interview properly. What do you do in traditional interviews? How do you deal with the case interviews? Those are all things that we spend a lot of time. And how do you sell yourself? So I'll never forget, a student came in and he said, I'm an engineer. I really think I screwed up that interview. And I said, what did you do? And he said, well, they said, tell me about myself. And he goes, I kind of froze. And then I started talking about, what I like to do in my spare time and and I said, what they're asking you when they say, tell me about yourself, is they're saying to you, how do you fit this position? What about you is going to make you a good employee? And so he goes, oh, I never thought about that. And I said, by having 2 or 3 professional stories in your back pocket, using that STAR method, by having those stories, and what I mean are examples, you're going to be able to pull that out and use that anytime you interview. You're going to be able to sell yourself to an employer by matching that story to your situation. He goes, oh, that's all I needed to do? Yeah, that's all you needed to do. But that takes practice. So when you start as early as your first year by developing a brand, understanding who you are, understanding your interests, your skills, and your values, what makes you tick, why you want to choose something, utilizing the Penn State network, utilizing alumni, utilizing Nittany Lion Career Network, which is this huge file cabinet that other colleges would die for, using that network, and then using the professional advice of the career office and your faculty, and getting engaged and starting to learn to answer a lot of questions and ask questions, and to develop your own luck. This is all something that happens throughout your 4 years at Penn State. This is what kind of builds you into an individual that then can interview and take advantage of all the things that Penn State has to offer. And let me just touch on that because we're running out of time here, but I want to touch on a few things about what does Penn State have to offer. We bring students up to University Park, or we get you engaged in 2 times a year to those huge career fairs where there's 200 to 500 employers across the country. Penn State's been voted the #1 place that recruiters like to come to recruit. And they want to talk to first-year students as much as they want to talk to 4-year students. So the sooner you start to take advantage of career fairs, we do here at Berks a career fair in the spring, and we'll be doing that again this spring. We'll have the last one we did before COVID, there were 93 employers engaged, and students can, as long as they have a professional interview resume in hand, they can dress professionally and meet with employers, and they can sell themselves in a little elevator pitch that we also teach you how to do. That happens in the spring. In the fall, we've been doing roundtables where we bring, depending on your major, we have separate days where we bring employers in, they talk about their companies, and then they separate you out to interview you. Why do you do that? You do it to get more practice, so that when you're asked a question, like I told you about the student that answered that question about stealing, you don't answer it that way because you are so good at interviewing, you don't need to answer it that way. So you become really comfortable with interviewing. We do have a product on our website, and I encourage everyone to look at our website on where you can actually do mock interviews, and it tapes you to see if you're doing anything weird, like playing with your hair or wringing your hands or using the words like, or any of those filler words that sometimes students use when they're nervous. So it'll tape you, and someone will review that video to see how well you're doing with interviewing. So those are some of the things that we do. I do want to mention that we have not only do I want you to post your resume on Nittany Lion Careers, which is a university-wide file cabinet for all internships, full-time jobs, students' resumes, and those corporate contacts. I also want to mention that Career Services has its own Canvas page that you can join. And you should be getting from me career weeks that announces things that are happening here at Berks. And everything that we do, every workshop that we do is recorded, and it's on our Canvas page. So I'll put that in the chat of how do you get on our Canvas, but we encourage you to do that. 10 Perkins, we're kind of hidden near the game room. So make sure you come down. You can reach me anytime by emailing me at PAJ7, and I'll put that in the chat as well. And you can email me and we can talk personally. And I can tell you that the students I've worked with this semester, they're just so grateful to have this all organized for them and to really understand what it is like to be a professional at Penn State. Thank you for your time.
Tish, that was such a nice wrap up there at the end, because we are professional. That's our topic today. That's great. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to invite our audience to submit any questions that you might have. You can always mark it as anonymous if you don't want to be tied to the question, and I'm happy to facilitate that. But I'm going to ask one question to get us started, Tish. After all, listening to all the advice that you have for students, trying to make connections can be rather intimidating for some students. So what advice would you be able to share with, especially like our freshmen, as far as jumpstarting themselves? Like, how can they break down those intimidation barriers that they might encounter?
I think it's intimidating just in general to think about, oh my, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I think the best thing to know is that, we are so relaxed in here. We are not intimidating. We want to make sure that you succeed. And the reason I'm in my job is that each of you has a different story. Everybody's unique, and everybody's professional self is different than the next person. So you don't have to fit a mold. We want to just see you and talk to you, and then develop this plan with you as an individual. And that's the biggest message I have, that it is an individual path. So, that's why I want you to come in and just meet with us.
Great, thank you so much. One of our questions from our attendees is, what is the STAR method? Professor Jepsen mentions about using the STAR method in interviews.
Okay, so the STAR method is situation, task, action, and result. And that is something that we use for behavioral interviewing. You set an example by having a situation that you would use, like in my engineering design course, I had to do this project. And so that's your situation. The tasks that you were tasked with by the professor, the actions you took, that's the A, and then what was the result of that? What happened at the end of that project? And they want to hear about what you did, how, as in that team, how did you perform those activities to help that project succeed? That's a start.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. Another question came in regarding appointments. And a student is wondering if they have to schedule appointments for help in creating or building their resume.
You can walk in. I am a terrible appointment maker, really. And we're here. We're here. And if no one is here by chance, you can always reach me at PAJ7. I'm putting that in right now. And we will see you and make sure that we get back to you as far as a time that works for you.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and again invite our audience to ask any other questions that they might have for our presenter today, but I'm going to go ahead and ask another one of my own. Earlier on in your presentation, Tish, you were talking about graduate school. And I know that it might be earlier on for students who are in their first semester to even think about graduate school, but I guess in general, with like the rest of the career stuff, it's never too early to start considering things. So what support or resources does the university have for students that might be considering graduate school? You know, like how does that kind of fit into the puzzle for our students?
Okay, so that is another hat that we wear. So we help students with preparing, you know, we read your letters of intent. We talk to you about other schools. Now, each graduate school is a big business. And what I think students don't realize that everybody has a little twist on how they're going to attract a student. So part of it is we teach you how to get prepared for those interviews. If you have to go for a graduate interview, we read your letters of intent. We talk to you about the testing that needs to happen. So yes, we know the path. We know the path to how to secure a job in those careers.
Great. We have two questions actually that popped up regarding the career services Canvas group. If a student wanted access to that, could you either share a link or explain to them how to get there?
Okay, and this is not my doing, this is the university's doing, that you have to actually get onto a link to get onto the career service Canvas page. And I did post that. It's psu.instructure.com/courses. And it has a number 2080274. You see that I posted? That was the first thing I posted.
Yes, and I am going to, if you visit our recording of the session, once it's posted, we will also make sure to keep that information on the Penn State Berks LionSide Chat website, or you could also directly email our presenter and she can provide you with that information if we miss you. Okay, so I think oh wait, one more walked in. Where is the career services office? Our last question.
Near, it's down in the Perkins Student Center and it's near the game room. It's next to actually near the game room.
Yeah, and like kind of sort of across from
academic affairs.
Okay.
Not academic.
Or student affairs. Student affairs office. That's all right. That's all right. Right building. Okay, so go to Perkins, stop by and get some career information, and then go to the game room. There you go. That's how.
And by the way, we have so many great handouts and books on how to put together resumes and how to do all the things we talked about today that we will give you for free. So, stop in and pick some of that up.
Perfect. All right. I think we are going to get ready to wrap up today's session. Any final thoughts to our presenter? You're all good, Tish?
All right. Thank you.
Did you enjoy your time today?
Yeah, I sure did. I hope to meet you all in my office at some point. Thanks again.
Absolutely. So thank you to Tish Jepsen for joining us today. And I was definitely reminded that when it comes to career, Luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity. I did appreciate that reminder. So I'd also like to thank everybody in our audience for joining us today for the LionSide Chat We Are series. As you click out of the webinar, you're going to receive access to a survey. Please take a few minutes to fill that out so that way we can give your feedback to our presenter, and we can also use it as a LionSide Chat platform to help fuel and inform our decisions for future chats. Okay. And speaking of next chats, our next chat is going to be We Are Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And it's going to be on Wednesday, November 3rd during Common Hour. It is our next installment of the Penn State We Are series. We're going to be hosting Dr. Ike Shibley, the Associate Professor of Chemistry here at Penn State Berks, who will present on themes from the Common Read book, Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance. So be sure to come back and meet with other faculty, staff, or students to learn about the experiences that you can be a part of here at Penn State Berks. So stay safe, Berks and beyond. Signing off until next time, this has been the Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. Thank you, Tish.